Begin by talking about one of the biggest pieces of news that we've had out of Web Summit so far, which is this new mandate, this major announcement from the QIA, investing $1 billion into a fund of funds, really seeking to invigorate the startup ecosystem here. How significant is that for you and the stakeholders you have on the ground here?
Well, as you can see, even at Web Summit, the momentum is rising in the region. We see a young, growing population, more of a vibrant startup and innovation ecosystem. Basically, I think this investment, and as you mentioned, His Excellency, the Prime Minister announced it at the opening of Web Summit, aims to revitalize the startup and venture cap ecosystem here. And basically, this is a fund of funds initiative, so that kind of runs in parallel with other initiatives such as the immigration overhaul, entrepreneurship residency, trying to attract and retain high-skilled talent. We see that this region is growing. We have young populations, very highly educated and economically accredited. And so definitely I think there's a lot of momentum and a lot of opportunities as well.
So what are you doing at the Investment Promotion Agency to ensure that Qatar is front and center when it comes to not just developing this ecosystem, but attracting talent from around the region and the world to come and live and work here?
Well, at Web Summit, we've announced the Startup Qatar initiative, which is a collaboration between 10 different entities here. And basically, it acts as a single repository of information at the Startup Qatar website. It also includes a number of incentives in line with international standards, like a tax incentive over 5 years, an exemption on registration fees, and as well as more business development support when it comes to startups. And if you look to create an innovation system, I think what you're looking to foster is this greater collaboration between government, industry, and academia. And when you have this kind of collaboration with the aim to tackle some of the challenges we face today, rather than having piecemeal competition, I think that's kind of the key of getting there in terms of generating a more innovative ecosystem.
Indeed, and I think one of the most interesting things that's happened over the last couple of years in the region is that the sovereign wealth funds have become active stakeholders in this conversation as well, not just transforming these nations, but also basically nation building here and looking at investments that are going to diversify these economies. And of course, the QIA and others are a case in point. But regional competition is rising, and I wanted to ask you about this. How do you position Doha relative to Riyadh or Dubai, for example? Because we know there is a lot of competition. How do you make sure that Doha is front and center here when you have well-funded, strong rivals around the region?
Look, I think, the region is fast growing at such a pace that the pie is getting so big that there isn't, it's not really a zero-sum game. So we all mutually benefit. Our regional economy is developing, is positive on Qatar, such as Qatar developing economically is also positive for the region. And so we see greater regional integration. You see the GCC kind of in tandem signing new free trade agreements, new infrastructure projects, and I think that is a win-win for all. Regional competition is always there. It's healthy. It's great to keep kind of on pace in terms of reform agenda and also developing on the development agenda. And so we feel it, we look at it in a positive way.
So a rising tide lifts all boats, I guess you could say. But look, Saudi Arabia, for example, is really pushing hard on this. They've just launched the regional headquarters program. What do you think that's going to mean for Qatar?
Yeah, I think definitely Saudi Arabia is also the largest economy in the GCC. There's a massive potential in that development over there. I think there is a differentiated offering when it comes to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and we all have a kind of a role to play in developing this regional economy. And so you can look at it in maybe the same context as you would look at European countries. While there might be competition, but there's also a large degree of complementarity, and so this is how we look at it.
What would you say is the single biggest challenge when it comes to attracting new investment into Qatar today?
I think, the most of the challenges we face are kind of exogenous challenges. It might have to do with kind of regional economic development potential. Greater integration we have, especially larger economies in the region, as they develop, I think they open up more opportunities for our countries here. And we see, I think, positive developments, whether it's in East Africa, Central Asia, South Asia. And so this kind of market access angle potentially is the key challenge, but it is, I think, also an opportunity.
So what should we expect to see from the investment advisory and positioning in Qatar for the rest of the year and the years to come? What are you going to be working on?
Well, I think Qatar post-World Cup, I mean, if you look at the rise in tourism, the increase in visibility, the amount of investment, we see it in the licensing numbers, the number of companies that are registering in Qatar, and especially, I mean, the growing population. I think Qatar is aiming, when you look at the National Development Strategy that recently launched, now we're at the final stretch in kind of going to what we call a knowledge-based economy. What we mean by that is basically an economy that's powered by our human development rather than by our natural resources. And I think this is kind of the aim in the next few years. So a lot is going to go into innovation, a lot is going to go into diversification, and as well as in kind of creating these future clusters and new industries.